Hello, welcome to the third session of Savory Library's Mental Health Chess Lessons. In session 1, we learned how to set up the board and how the pieces move. In session 2, we learned about opening game strategies. Now, in session 3, we will learn about strategies to use in game. When playing chess, it is very important to study the board so that you can make smart moves. One general rule of chess is you do not touch a piece until you are ready to move it. Therefore, you must look at the board, analyze it, and see every single possibility that there might be before you make your move. Before we go further, one simple defensive strategy in game is known as castling. Castling is the only time in which your king is able to move more than one space. If there are no pieces between your king and your rook, you can move your king over twice and your rook on the other side. You can also castle to the queen side. This way, you move your rook over 3 times, your king and your rook over to the side. There are rules which govern when you can and can't castle. As long as you have not moved your king or your rook, you are allowed to castle. You cannot castle if at any point your king has been put in check. And you also cannot castle through a check. So, as long as you meet these criteria, you are able to castle. This is a defensive move. It puts your king into a surrounded position by his own pieces, which makes it harder to attack him. Other important strategies are being able to sacrifice pieces and compromise when you have to choose between a piece. Different pieces have different values to the players. There will come a time in a chess game where you will have to choose between losing one of 2 pieces. When this time comes, it is important to know which piece is more powerful and which piece can have more influence on the board. This is important to know because in real life, you will sometimes have to make choices between what you want to do and what is best for you to do. In this setup, the pawn is able to take both the rook and the knight. You can only save one. Whichever one you choose to save, you will lose the other one. When it comes to determining which piece you want to save, it is important to know how powerful the pieces are and how they contribute to the game. Generally speaking, queen, rook, bishop, knight is the order in which you want to protect your piece in this situation. The queen covers more squares than any other piece and can move in more directions. The rook covers the second most amount of squares and if used effectively can cut off the king from a side of the board. The bishop covers the third most amount of squares. Because it only moves diagonally, if the king is not on the same color as the bishop cannot directly attack it. The knight, because of its unique way it can move, is often a very popular piece. It's often a piece people say is their favorite. It is actually the least powerful and covers the least amount of the board. In its optimal position, the knight can only cover 6 squares total. Sometimes when you are on a team, when you are working a group project, you will realize that different people bring different skill sets and different strengths to the team. One person might be more important than another person. However, everybody does have their role and everybody must work together. In addition to sacrifice, you must also learn how to compromise. As stated in session 2, whenever the king is in threat of danger, this is known as check, and you must move him out of check. Therefore, in this situation, the knight can take both the queen and the king. There is not a choice to be made. You have to move your king. This is a compromise which you have to be willing to take. There's no other option. Offensively, you can use this to trap pieces, not just your queen, but also your opponent's rook or your opponent's bishop. Of course, if you were to try that with the knight can take you. This setup can also work with other pieces. The king has to move, gives you opening to the knight, to the rook. Or, even though your king's not in front of the rook, it is still under threat, which allows the rook to be taken. A smart offensive player will try to find ways to make his opponent choose between two pieces, and sometimes eliminate that choice to where where your opponent has to make a certain move and you are able to take a piece. This often comes into use with the king and the queen. If at any point it is seen that the king and queen are in a line with each other, a smart offensive player will try to put the king in a position where it has to move in order to take the queen. If the queen is in front of the king, even though the queen is being threatened and you would like to move her, you cannot put your king in threat. So therefore you are not allowed to move your queen. A smart defensive player understands this and tries hard not to line his king and queen up. Similarly, that can work with the bishop or any other piece that is in front of the king. Another important chess strategy is using pieces in combination. Oftentimes, the board will be set up during a game in such a way where multiple pieces are all having influence on the same square. It is very important when you are playing and this is becoming set up to look at the board, analyze every move and every potential move. Because as I said earlier, you cannot move the pieces in advance If you touch a piece, you must move it. Therefore, as we have just seen, as this were to go down, while the queen may think that she can, at this point, take the rook, she has to see that the knight is also there for that last move. So if you are in one of these situations, you want to make sure that if it all plays out the way the pieces move and that it will play out, that you will come out on top. Because your opponent will try to set a trap where throughout the taking of several pieces, they'll either end up with a more powerful piece, an overall piece advantage, or a position advantage. These are important in-game strategies to employ during chess. As you can see, it's important to look ahead, to have a plan, and to not move too hastily so that you can always make smart moves. Thank you.